Hey, what's
Hi,
up? What's up? I got my red sweater on. I got Charlie over here chirping me. It's nice to have Charlie home.
I love it.
Are you happy to have Charlie home?
Oh yeah, it's great.
What's your favorite quality? What's your favorite quality of Charlie?
Without joking around,
Without joking, like
I
fully
love
serious.
energy.
He's just a good energy guy.
I was just
I
saying,
would
he was
agree.
on the ice with me, and I've said a million times that there's an age group where it just seems like guys are quiet.
Mm.
So he comes on the ice, just walking around the gym, whatever it is like there's an energy there, and it's contagious. That's what I love.
That's a good
It's-
answer.
Yeah. It's even in the house. There's energy, different energy, youthful
Nice.
energy.
That's good.
Yeah,
No, that's good. That's a good answer. I like that.
Yeah, no, that would be what I like. And then we have just good talks, eh, bud? We have
Good
just good talks.
I have a strict policy that I can't give Charlie compliments in front of him. So, sorry, you ain't getting one from me, buddy. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the PowerTech online membership program. If you've been listening to Andy and I wondering, hey, how are they able to get all this podcast content out there? Well, that's because of our members. For just $9.99 a month, you can get access to our online video library, including hundreds of videos of Coach Andy teaching, and have the option for consultation calls with Andy or myself to go over anything you need. We can cover training, nutrition, coaching, parenting, agents, the junior college hockey path, whatever's of interest to you. You'll also be able to participate in our popular Ask Me Anything episodes, have access to special discount codes, and be given priority for any PowerTech in-person camps or events. If you like what we're doing here and you want to support us, this is the best way to do it. Visit powertechhockey.ca/memberships or find the link in the description of this video to learn more. So, very cool. We got playoffs going on right now.
Love it.
Have you been keeping up with it at all?
Yeah, I've been
NHL?
watching. Actually, it was great because trying to think, was it Saturday? Fortunately, this guy doesn't have a whole lot of stuff going on in his life right now, so we did a little bit of yard work. He slept in a little bit, and then we watched 3.5 games straight.
Really?
Loved it.
NHL games? Oh, sick.
Yeah, it was
What
4
games
on
did you watch?
Saturday. First one was it Islanders? Islanders, Hurricanes, Florida, Tampa, Washington, New York,
All good games.
Colorado, Winnipeg, Vancouver, Nashville. That might be
Nice.
10 games.
So who do you guys got?
What do you mean?
Like who, if you're picking, who do you
No
think's
idea.
going all the way? I know it's no idea, but
No idea.
whatever. Who do you like?
I like New York a lot.
Yeah.
I like the Rangers.
Rangers.
I like the Rangers. The West is good. I mean, Edmonton was really good the other night. But then Vegas was good. Yeah, I like Dallas a lot. I like Vegas a lot. I don't know. How do you pick a winner? I don't know.
We had to do a bracket at the academy today.
Yeah.
Every kid's doing a bracket. I'm really looking. I'm like, even when we did one for March Madness too, and it's like your odds of actually getting a correct bracket are 1 in 7 trillion or whatever it is, and I'm looking at some of the teams and I'm like Colorado, Edmonton, just looking at the star-studded teams alone, it's like, okay, how do you pick? And then those teams are going to lose. Someone always beats those teams anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, out of all these teams, I don't know, which do you think is the most kind of gritty that'll go the whole way? Is that kind of New York? Is that where we kind of see they
They've
have a
got
little
some
bit of
grit.
everything?
They've got some grit. Florida's got some grit.
You think Toronto pulls it out or no? You don't think so? I think Boston's too tough. That's what I was saying. I think they can just go the distance, man. Tough matchup for them first round again, though, eh? It seems like every first round it's freaking Boston every time they make the playoffs.
It's crazy.
I know.
It's crazy. I really like. I like New York a lot.
That's your pick. If you
I
got
don't know. I guess maybe Rangers. Maybe.
not a bad pick. Who do you got? Carolina.
Carolina. Yeah.
Carolina's not a bad pick.
You look at it, right? You look at the 16 teams that made it, and you shrink down that league, and you got 16 teams that anybody can win, really. Really.
Yeah,
I think
for
Washington's going to be in tough against New York.
Yeah,
that's the way I see it. I think they're in tough, but it's so close.
What year was it when LA won? When they came in as 8th seed?
13,
something around
12,
there. So I remember that was the first year. I had always been paying attention to hockey, but that was the first year that I clued in to this was the 8th seed and like I really put in perspective, like this is a team that's not supposed to win. And that was, I think, the time when I was starting to be like, okay, it doesn't matter. Let's just get there. You know what I mean? Like get to the dance, and then it doesn't matter who's who, because whatever, who knows? You get a hot goalie, you get a couple good bounces, somebody gets hurt, and then anybody can beat anybody. I don't know. I'd be curious about you too. Even with in the OHL, I feel like it's kind of the same thing. It's like you get these teams, like I'm thinking of Saginaw right now, where it's like they've loaded up because they're going to be Memorial Cup regardless. But it's like it's not necessarily, it's never necessarily. It's like, okay, now you're going to win. You know what I mean? They're going to play London. It's like that's going to be a bloodbath whenever anybody plays London. That's what happens. So I remember that was the first time I kind of checked into that, where it doesn't really matter where you're in. But how do you guys feel about OHL playoffs? Who do you got? That's a little more close to home.
I'm gonna say London.
London.
Yeah, I'm gonna say London.
So
they got a little bit of everything. Like they play hard. They play defensive. They're so well coached. They're tough. They got a tough enough team, like a grindy team. And I think to me that at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. You look at the NHL. Like going back to that, you got the teams that have the depth, the teams that have the that grittiness that are hard to play against. Because you look at the level of competition of once it starts, it's like how many guys finish their checks regularly now, and now your size and your toughness is what takes over, right? And then you get your secondary scoring. So that's where Dallas is going to be good. They got like
Dallas.
They're deep, like with their secondary scoring. Like they almost got, I don't know. I don't even know if you call their fourth line a fourth line.
Yeah, seriously,
it's incredible. So one thing that's interesting to me is, that Matt Rempe came in the league last year, and the year before was Jack Eye, and I think like what's his name, Rempe in New York, they're just loving him, right? And I think you're going to start seeing a change. Not that everyone got away with it, but I think there is a more emphasis right now on guys that can play that role. And I'm not saying just beating the snot out of people, but guys that can grind and have the size and stuff. It's a copycat league. Like that's what happens is, you go from like when LA won their cups, right? They were big and heavy and they were grindy and then teams started to go to that until I think it was maybe Pittsburgh that won after. I can't remember 100%. Then teams would change their teams. Oh, we got to be faster and skilled. But I think at the end of the day, to get through the playoffs, you got to have that grindy stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say too. It's funny to see that how things change, because we've been talking about this over and over and over about the bucket of vanilla thing, where it's like everybody's the same. It's kind of like the NHL, I think, sets the tone of what are we looking for, and then that kind of starts to trickle down into the lower level leagues, minor hockey, and then like obviously junior college, whatever. But it's funny how it changes. We've been saying this for a few years probably now on the podcast about just everybody's the same. Everybody's the same. And then you look at with Jack Eye last year and then Rempe this year, it's like, where's the camera going now? The camera's going to that guy. It still goes to, McDavid and McKinnon and whatever, but the talk ends up being about, you're almost taking for granted that McDavid, McKinnon, these guys do that now. It's like, we just take that for granted. And now this is the story. The story is, wow, look at how much these guys are mixing it up and getting involved. And that's, the tone is now being changed a little bit on where the emphasis is from a media perspective. And then the media perspective kind of is the indicator of like what is selling. You know what I mean? Are people more interested in this? Or are they more interested in this? And it's seeming like there's more interest now going to this power forward, a little more rough and tough style guy. And that's going to start to trickle down. And then you see, like to your point too, it's like whoever wins the cup, what kind of team do they have? Did they have the big, strong? I remember, I forget who we were talking about that, but it was when, I think it was a little bit when LA won, and then I think it was Boston as well, where it kind of it was that rough and tough, that pesty, rough and tough, no quit, gritty kind of style.
Yeah, I see. The thing is, no matter what, like you have to have skill. Like you can't like. I don't know if we talked about this in a podcast recently, but you can't have. I think I did. I said if you have, because I used that quote from Barry Smith last week. If you don't have an identity, or if you have everybody doing their own thing, whatever. So if you have just all skill, like it'll get you to a certain degree, to a certain point. But then you're missing out on, maybe it's puck battles or the big hits. But then if you have all 6, 7 guys that are grinders, does that turn over into making plays? So you need that mixture. So obviously you need the high end skill guys. No, there's no question about it. But to me, at the end of the day, but you have good quality guys that are hard to play against. That's what's going to win. And I think when you look at, we can take this into even drafting players and coming through things is that's, I think there's going to be a prime, what's my word? Prime. They'll pay a prime to get guys that can, a premium. That's the word that I didn't know. I know the word, but that's the premium that people are going to pay, is to get guys that can stick out like a sore thumb, like in the rough areas of the game. Because you get like, and the thing is like, what you have. I was just talking to an NHL assistant coach last night, and he was just saying like, one of the reasons that his team lost out, the general manager comes into the room regularly, and like basically at the end of the year, what do we need? And he said, we need some men. He goes, we got guys that are too soft, because they want to play the, they don't want to get their nose dirty and stuff, and that's why they didn't make the playoffs, basically. And obviously, right? So he said, give us 1 or 2 guys at the back end that can just be miserable, and a couple guys up front, because a lot of the guys don't want to pay that price, and they forget that winning a puck battle is actually a skill. So I think that, and I was on the ice this morning too, like, and I'm just watching. And it's so funny how this happens. Is like we talked about the YouTube videos and all that stuff. Kids try to do all the fancy stuff not before, but instead of just the foundation, being really good at the foundation. Yeah. So like there's 1 or 2 kids on this ice this morning that I would consider them at the lower level of, U18. And I was doing a drill, like it started off with just like a simple pass, and then we execute a skill thing. And the one kid was making passes, like no matter what, he would try to sauce it. And it's like, and the tape job is like all fancy and all this stuff. It's like, and I get it. You're a kid. Well, he's 18, 17, but it's like you spend so much time on the things that would be fine to use once in a while.
Yeah, those are the
but your foundation isn't there. Your foundation isn't there. A good hard pass or a good crisp pass on a tape would be perfect, but instead it's got to be like a little bit of sauce and slow things down. It's like, so that's the thing is, the more that people understand that you've got that compete factor and competing for pucks, then you could use your skill afterwards. That's what kind of I was talking about with that coach last night. It goes, I just want the skill guys are still allowed to be skilled, but you got to go win some battles. Then you could use your skill.
Yeah, for sure.
Because winning battles is a skill itself, right?
Yeah, I think, and that's a big thing. Even for, and it's funny because I like even remember playing. It was just not. I don't know, presented the right way or not taught the right way. Like the importance of this other stuff, like it was because it was emphasized to a degree once I got to junior. Like that was when I started to hear, like as a winger, for example, if I'm on the wing, it's like getting the pucks out, making sure you get the pucks out. I remembered it was really emphasized then with my coach when I was already 16, 17. But up to that point, it was like, I had never heard of this. Like, no one was saying this to me. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's really unfortunate because those are the difference makers. And it sounds cliche. It does. But there's only so many guys that are going to be those upper level skill guys anyways. And they need everybody else to be able to do these other things. And it doesn't matter what the trend is or what kind of player is most valuable. It's like there's a baseline, like you said. You have to have the skill. This is included in that skill. Like there has to be a baseline of everybody's kind of here, and then we can branch off and have this guy that's a little extra good at this or extra good at that. But I noticed the exact same thing with our guys. It's just not the focus as much as it needs to be. And kids would do well to focus on that, man, because that is the stuff that's going to end up getting you noticed. But it's the sauce. You know what I mean? It's the sauce. It's the tape job. It's the celebration. Even last night, I'm watching these young kids, like the U13 age group. They score and they want to do their fancy celebration thing, and it's fine. Like they're kids, it's fine, and that's fun and whatever. But it's they're already being primed about that's what it's about. Like I want to score a goal so I can go do this selly thing. So it's just the priorities seem to be twisted up at the younger levels. It's not really taught in the same way. And then once we get up to playoff hockey here, we're talking about these things that make a difference that at younger levels are just not emphasized. So there's a lot that you can learn from a guy like Rempe, or a guy like Jack Guy, or fill in the blank, whatever guy that isn't the shining star, even though those guys are getting a lot of media attention or whatever, but they're not what you typically would think of as a shining star. So like for me, it's interesting to see that shift start to happen, whereas some of these guys are the ones that are getting more of the attention now because they're willing to do or fill a hole. They're willing to fill a hole of something that teams are missing, or that they're not really seeing. And for you, I guess for you, would that, like, watching playoff hockey, whether it's NHL, OHL, whatever, are like what would you qualify like or what characteristics are you putting on for a team to be a winning team, or a team to go deep into the playoffs or be successful? Like, what are some of your key characteristics? Because it isn't just that. Like, it's not just the grind kind of stuff.
Not at all. You
So
need
it's like
skill.
if you're spelling out your ideal team of like how to win, it's like, what do you need? What do you want to see? And all that kind of thing.
Well, you got, like, the thing is like, you could talk about like because I don't want to ever sound negative about having skill. I mean, that would sound absolutely ridiculous, right? Like, you don't need skill guys, you just need grinders. That's not what we're saying at all. What we're saying is you need to have your top guys be top guys, but then you need, like, but what happens in the playoffs, it just gets harder. Why? So a lot of people might say, why does it get harder? My wife asked that. Why is it so different in the playoffs? Well, the difference in the playoffs is that there's more at stake now. If you lose, you're done. So that's number one. So your emotions go up. There's more at stake, and you play that same team, at the NHL, OHL level. Not so much college because they play one and dones, right? But when you play someone that a possible 7 times in a row in a week and a half or 2 weeks, then what happens is you get a hate on for people. You do. You actually, little things get under your skin. So it could be, maybe you're not the most physical guy, let's say. All right. But I'm trying to think of an NHL guy that would be a good example. I can't think of someone right off the top of my head, but let's say he's a point guy, but just after the whistle's getting in someone's face a little bit, or just a little jab here and there, that throws another team off a little bit. So now you're playing with the emotions too, not just the physical, right? You're just pissing people off, or because it's possibly 7 games of this stuff. Just a little elbow, a little jab after the whistle. Those little things go a long way. But as far as like the playing goes, it's finishing checks. But then finishing checks without being stupid. Like, you don't want to go out of your way and get out of position. So you need to be. So I think what happens in the playoffs, you're playing. You'll see teams play not so offensively minded, obviously, because if you give up position, your defensive position, like one bounce the wrong way could change a series. So it's a little bit more cautious that way, but it's the physicality that goes into it that makes just a big difference. Grinding along the walls, it's the little things now. It's like, and if you really watch, if you're watching, pay more attention to face-offs, winning face-offs. Where does the puck go? Does it get deep? Can you control a game, manage the game, stuff like that?
We were looking at some video the other day. I think it who was it? It was Gensel that we were watching. And he scored a goal, and it was like the subtle, I guess what I want to kind of get at is the subtleties of like little details, and how much more important that is coming down the stretch in the playoffs in particular, because things are so much more buckled down. So I don't know if people remember the goal. Good. I don't remember if people remember the goal, but basically Gensel got a pass in the slot. He was right in coverage. It was almost by the face-off dot. And just before this pass came, he was fully covered, and he just like took a little step, left-handed shot. He took a little step out, and it was just enough where he was out of the reach of this guy and out of the reach of this guy, so he could get a one-timer shot off, which I think he ended up scoring on the play, if I'm remembering correctly. And we stopped and we kept going over this play 3, 4, 5 times with the team, or the guys watching the video, because there was good wall work that led up to it. So we're like, this guy good, but then this guy over here, like the little detail of just making sure he's open. Like Mac was talking about it, and the way he said it was, the guys without the puck dictate the play. Because if you get to open ice, you're now an option. If you don't, you're not. So he was talking about this play with Gensel, and he just happened to did a little baby kind of T push a foot and a half over. And so as a left-handed shot, it made that stick lane available. If he stayed in the same spot, he's not available. And these are the kinds of things that down the stretch, it's like these little subtle details. It's the difference. You talked about it before with the one-time pass. You know, if you're off the guy's foot by an inch, if you're off the foot by an inch and a half, it's like, yeah, you made a great spin-a-ram over there, but then your pass was bad, and now you guys didn't get a shot off. And those are the things that start to have an impact on the game down the stretch. It's not the fancy stuff. It's the putting yourself in a good position, making sure your stick is ready to go, making sure you can find a guy on the tape. Like, these are the things that actually make the difference down the stretch. And this is what people look for. This is what they look for, like the stick detail. They look for your positioning in the offensive zone. If you're making yourself available for shot lanes, if you can hit the pass when the guy's open, you know, they pick up on this stuff. You talk about it with scouts all the time, where you'll say, yeah, this guy, he doesn't have very many points, but he's playing with these guys. It's like, we know, like, we can see that, you know. And I've been having this conversation with parents like endlessly over the last several weeks, doing all this academy stuff, talking with them about next year. And I keep re-emphasizing, all of the people that we have working with us are paying attention to these things. Like, these are the things we're looking for. We're looking for these little detail things that actually make a difference to making a good player. And this is how we're gauging potential of kids. Do they do some of this stuff? Do they have some of these tools? Are the shortcomings they have fixable? Which, for the younger the kid, the more fixable, because there's just so much more time, you know. But it's important that people see that parents realize that, and it's a hard thing for people to see, again, when they're right in it, especially as parents with younger kids. But these are the kinds of things that down the line people are going to start talking to them about and asking them about. You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the young guys like coming up, I would say, like, we're playing like it's called Two Nuts North this morning. It's a small area game, and so Charlie and I were like the option pass, like, for possession. So we get the puck, and guys, to your point, without the puck, is you're standing there and you're going, okay, I can't make the play because I'm not allowed to move. And guys just didn't have that in their head, like, okay, I got to get open, or got to work hard to get open and stuff like that. And that's the difference, right? It's the little things that you do without the puck that make you a great player. And that's, speaking, like you just mentioned, the scouting piece is like, that's the one thing I would say to people. And we've said this before, is, you know, I'll say it a different way. Is like, the more and more and more and more that I'm in this business of teaching hockey after I've played and coached, is the more I see how important it is for kids to do the things that aren't popular on YouTube, right? Because, like I've always said, people could run all kinds of skill drills and stuff like that, but when it comes down to big boy hockey, as you start playing big boy hockey, it's those skills are not executionable, or they're very rarely executionable. There's rare moments where something like that could happen. Like, I mean, last night, I think, or the night before, the first night of the playoffs, Connor McDavid came down, did the spin-a-ram, got it across, and it was a great goal. Like, that's Connor McDavid, and guys can pull that stuff off, but it's the other stuff that make it that make you the player. And so, like, if you look at, when you look, I guess the other side is that when you look at, like, even the draft rankings that come out and all that stuff, and I mean, there's boards all over the place you can follow, right? And the people that they put up there typically are the high-end skill guys, and that's okay. And I think when you look at, like, the NHL Central Scouting, for example, you know, I've had to ask questions about this in the last couple of years, because it really didn't make a lot of sense to me how they sometimes rank them. And I was like, okay, what is this? What was the purpose of the Central Scouting? So back in the 70s, the league, the NHL, set up Central Scouting to basically help teams and put a database together for the NHL. And in that, because now, if you look at the time, 1970 something to maybe 2000s, 2005 when computers came out, not came out, but when they became like a tool that everybody would use, you'd have to hire a ton of scouts to get all over the place, right? So hockey's so big now, right? So that Central Scouting was actually a pretty good resource at the time, to comparables. That didn't make it perfect, but it helped, because they could identify, yeah, that kind of matches up who we think are the best players. But even though you have that guy at number 6, he's not the type of player we want. So, but in that range, it might help. And as hockey evolved and got better, and the technology got better, and you got the instats and all these different things that can help you scout players, and teams realize and the resources are there to go all over the world and look at players. There's a lot more scouts per team actually. So now that central scouting database is not necessarily a usable thing for an NHL team. But basically what it's for, I was talking to someone the other day and they said it's good for goalies because you can look and get some comparables, or maybe you didn't see a guy in another place as much, and you can say, yeah, the scouting report from Central Scouting says this, and maybe you can agree or disagree. And he said a couple other things, but he goes, for the most part, it's not something that a team would actually look at, and that makes total sense because if you're on Central Scouting and you're putting a list together, you might watch me play 5 times, and depending on what time of the year that was, I might have been at my absolute best for 5 games. Maybe it was a period of time, like you watched me 5 games in November, you saw me play 5 great games, or maybe you saw me play 5 with a sore ankle and stuff that you don't know, or a injury or something. You put down the lineup to be a checking role, and that's what they see. So anyways, they look at skating and the stuff like that, but they'll rank them out. But that could be like if you're the Chicago Blackhawks now and you're looking at pick number 12 or 6 or whatever, it doesn't have to match up to the central scouting, because it's like now you're going with needs. So you might be a really high end skill guy, but okay, I've already got Connor Bedard, I've got this guy, but what we need is 2 really hard to play against defensemen. So that kid could be ranked. Maybe he is ranked number 3 or 4 or 6, but he might be ranked 22.
Yeah,
but that's what we need. So you're skipping over a whole bunch of guys, and the point is that the marketing piece, and it makes a lot of good stories. Like you take your top 10 guys, and it's like, yeah, these guys they probably are the top 10 players in the world. But after that, or even before that, it can flip around, right?
Yeah, and I remember we looked at this with the OHL draft and the NHL draft of even which guys end up being solidified players. So it's like even from guys that get drafted in the NHL outside of the first like 7 picks or something, 5, then it's like super, and even then there's exceptions, but it's like then it's super hit and miss. Like guys that work out, guys that don't. Like there's guys that we've worked real close with that have been in those kind of in that area, and they're like nowhere. You know what I mean? They don't even play, or they stop playing after a couple years and they never made it. Then you got the late guys that end up figuring it out, or undrafted, or guys that you've mentioned, even coming out of the OHL that sign a contract the day their last season's done and they're good to go. The Jack Guy's an example of that. So it's really doesn't.
Logan Morrison, that's another one I just.
That was the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Just looked at that kid, and I got to watch him for 2 years, like live, and follow him quite a bit. And he was like always a top point getter in the OHL. And he went 4 years or 5 years without getting drafted. And before the playoffs ended last year, he signed with Seattle. It's like, how does that happen? Like he wasn't even ranked.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? It's
right.
like it's craziness.
So it's a good point. Like because we've done this exercise. You look at where guys end up over time after 10 years later. How many guys played games? How many guys ended up there? And 10 years before they're on top of the world because they were a second round pick or whatever. Only 10 years later they're not playing, or they're not where they thought they'd be, or whatever, which is okay. It's not that it's not okay. It's just it's not what they thought, and so I'm going to be interested now with our crop of guys that are coming up on this kind of age. It'll be interesting to see over the next 3, 4, 5, 6, however many years, like where do they actually end up shaking out? Because a lot of the guys that we have, they're going to end up chasing it to see how far they can go, and it'll be cool to see relative to draft status who ends up somewhere versus not, which would be kind of interesting. So, I think I want to shift gears a little bit. Kind of talking about. I want to see if you have anything else about playoffs. Do you have anything else about playoff stuff? Good. Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to start talking about some parent stuff again, and I think the frame. It's kind of nice that we talked about the playoff thing first, because I always am reminded, again, with all these conversations I'm having with parents, how far away this NHL thing is, and what a different game and a different level. And when you scale things back down to youth levels, how insignificant what is going on actually is, though it seems so significant when you're in it, when you're talking to people about it. which makes sense because it's their whole world, right? But for the last, I was just kind of bitching about it too earlier today. Like for the last like several weeks, talking with so many parents and going through the youth hockey process, all the while having the frame of reference of hockey beyond, like higher level hockey, what it turns into and how it is. It's just really, I think it's really important that we continue to remind the parents to just chill out, like to just relax with what's going on at their 12-year-old level, 13-year-old level, because in the nicest way that I can be about it, it just changes so much. There's so many things that are different. There's so many things that don't matter. There's so many things that seem important that aren't. We're looking at it right now, even with the kids that just went through the draft in our area. It's like all these guys. I read the newspaper article that we had locally with all the kids that are ranked.
Media. That's what I was saying.
You know what I mean?
There has to be media.
And
people have to write an article about something and talk about something.
Yeah, and this is what gets people worked up. And then at the younger ages, it's the same thing. And then there's an inability. Like, man, I'm trying to be just like nice about it. But
just to go back, so you'll let you think.
Go.
Charlie was just saying before we started this podcast, he goes, the media.
Yeah.
He goes, big news. Austin Matthews didn't take the morning skate today. Like, what's wrong? It's like, maybe he just didn't want to skate today because he's allowed to say no.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But the other part, like, you have to be able to be honest about where your kid's at. And you have to be able to be honest about how much you know about what your kid should be doing, So on the day-to-day when things are happening, it's just, I'm finding that parents are just so naive about where their kids are. They're just so naive. And it's not, I'm not saying it to be negative. I'm not saying for like that it's a bad thing necessarily, but there's just such a lack of awareness of where the kids are at and what the path looks like moving forward, and you see it immediately. It's like the day after for us, the U16 draft. It's like the day after. It's like all of a sudden everyone's thrown into no man's land and everything they thought they knew is just not reality anymore. And it's like, now we have to reset our foundations of what we believe. And it's like very confusing. It's very discouraging. We've seen, and you've probably seen more than me, people just like absolutely lose it and never get it back because this was like such an impactful event. And I'm trying to not be like overly specific, but I'm just seeing it with in the conversations that I'm having, that there's certain things that just, you need to be able to take things with a bigger picture in mind of where things are going and what people are doing. Does that make sense? I know I'm being kind of vague.
I think for once, I might clean it up for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Maybe.
Okay.
I'm going to throw it by using examples.
Yeah.
Okay. So the coach sucks. I don't like the coach. Coach is this, that, the other thing. And that's young people hockey. And that's okay to say if your coach is, he stole 3 cars last week. Right?
Yeah.
And he hasn't taken a shower in 6 months, and
he's a bad person.
And he's just a bad human being.
Yeah.
But to expect a coach in youth hockey, and I'm not talking the Toronto area, Detroit areas, because they it's the premier leagues and they pay coaches and the coaches are supposed to be good. That doesn't make them good, but they're probably better. They probably played at a higher level and they know the game and stuff like that. So, but even that, I'll go back to that. So to expect to have a really, really, really good hockey coach I think is an unreal expectation. I think what you should expect is a coach that, is going to put some time into having a good practice, keep a reasonable accountability with the kids, a good accountability and having this is the dream, right? Having good practices, play the kids to win and play development and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is that, right, so that's little boy hockey or young kid hockey. But once you get to like OHL, junior at almost any level, college and pro, you might have. So just to back up, so parents get like all freaked out about that. He's not a good coach, this, that, the other thing. It's like, first of all, like, how do you identify what a good coach is? Right? Because a lot of times, I was talking to one of our goalie coaches. He said, he runs these things and he's excellent. He's an excellent goalie coach. And he's detailed. And his mind works differently than a lot of people, which I like. So he said he was doing one where the kids were doing really slow movements and just getting it, catching the puck, following it in, and they're young. And one of the dads says if he's not sweating any more than that, he's not coming out. This is crap. I was like, and I'm going, so you're wrong. This is actually really good. It's a really good progression. So what they feel is could be a good coach or a bad coach. Like that's the naivety of
Right, exactly.
is you don't really understand what a good
Great
coach is. I'm not
example.
saying everybody. I'm saying like a lot of
It's a
people.
great example.
So to sit there and say coach is no good. Well, and I've said this 1,000 times. Well, what you don't know what you're going to get. So trying to control who your coaches are and freaking out about it might feel good in the short term, but when you get to a junior level, you lose that control. I mean, you could still say, well, I'm not going to play in this league or I'm not going to play for that team. Like you could hold out, but you might not play. So you lose control of what of something like that, like your coaching. Put them in a good environment because now it's about playing hockey, and it might be what you don't think is a good coach anymore. So you're freaking out about something early, but like my point to I think is what you were trying to say is like you got to kind of let things happen unless it's bad people, then it's a change because it's something that you're going to have to deal with. If you're trying to manipulate kids on the team, that's another thing, right? Like not playing with this guy. If this guy's on the team, I'm not playing. It's like, okay, but when you get to a higher level, that's something that is out of your control. You have to learn to deal with little things like that. So the thing that I feel is important is that you are where you are. We live in the Windsor, Ontario area. This is what we get for our youth hockey. If you live in Toronto, it's going to be different. Ottawa's different. Detroit's different. And Los Angeles is all different. So, but within where you live, you have to make the best of what it is. And some people are fortunate, or maybe it's unfortunate, to be honest, that they grow up in an organization where they fit perfectly in with that team and they have like the perfect coach for them, and the everything is just nice and good. But that's going to change at some point. You get shit sandwiches at some point, so you have to learn how to deal with it. So like in youth hockey, you try to make the best of what you have, and every decision that you make when you're 8, 9, 10 to 16 is not going to make a heck of a lot of a difference if you're good enough to get to another level. So the thing that I would say would be like enjoy it. Like enjoy it. And you might be on maybe not maybe not a winning team, but you do your best to make it a winning team and a winning culture. And as you get to a higher level, like you still, if you're good enough, people are going to find your skill set that you do well, and you're going to learn the game of hockey at a junior level. You're going to start learning hockey because doesn't resemble anything like minor hockey. It's just not the same game.
Yeah, and you put
is that kind of what you were saying?
Yeah, you put it perfect. Those are good examples too, because it was almost like kind of the thread I'm pulling out is like there's it's not, I don't want to say it's an expectation, but there's just such a higher standard. It's almost like there's an expectation of perfection with the situation that you're going into, and I can appreciate that from a parenting side, even not having a kid. It's like you want to put your kid in the perfect situation. Like I totally appreciate that, but shit's just not perfect, man. And it'll never be. So it's just are you in the best? Are putting your kid in the best situation or the best environment or giving them the best option or the most amount of option possible? And I think that's more the question when you're making decisions about where to go, who to play with, who the coach is, yada yada. There's always going to be something that's not exactly the way you want it to be because there's many people involved. And that's not just a hockey, it's just a life thing. It's going to happen at work, it's going to happen at school, it's going to happen wherever you're doing whatever. There's just going to be it's going to be not perfect. That's just the nature of living. It's just things are imperfect, man. And I find people, when I'm having these conversations, just from my experience now, having a lot of these conversations of late, especially, it's like everyone says what I'm saying. Everybody says like, yeah, like we're here for, this reason and we know it's not going to be this and whatever. But then when it comes down to it, it's like, then there's some pushback about, well, I don't like that my kid is being treated this way, or I don't like that, whatever, fill in the blank, And this kind of brings me to my second point about kind of how I was mentioning or parents are a little bit naive about their own kids. And I know you've had this experience too. It's like, if they're given situation X, like who's the shithead here? Is it your kid? Is it all the adults in the room? Is it everybody except for you? And this is another thing that I've been running into the last few weeks in particular. It's like parents unable to see their kid for what they are. And maybe it's they're choosing not to. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they haven't seen it. I don't know. Like I know you've had experience with this as well. But I feel like we were talking about this the other day. I was like, why are you making me be the asshole? You know what I mean? Why are you making me have to explain to you that your kid's been a problem or that your kid has done this thing? And you're trying to tell me, no, he didn't. Yes, he did. You know what I mean? It's like, yes, he did. He did though. So why is it this difficult? Like, why are you making me have to be the one to do this? And they all talk the talk. They talk the accountability, you know?
You remember this? I had to address the same person a couple times. Kids were young, and kid was in line, and he was just jabbing guys, and he was farting around. So I kind of gave it to him a little bit. Said stop, whatever. And dad said, oh yeah, my son said that you were upset with him about something. I said, yeah, he's farting around, man. I didn't use fart though. You're farting around. And he goes, oh, it doesn't sound like him. I know it doesn't sound like him, but it was him. It was there. I was in front of me, and it was driving everybody nuts and me. Same person. It was a couple years later. Another incident. It was about 3-4 things. Another incident. It's never the kid's fault. Like, but it is.
Right.
But it is. And it's like the kid is not a bad kid at all. At all. Like I'm saying that like not to make it sound nice. He's not a bad kid at all. But he in my experience with this one particular person was like he's a great kid, but there was something there that he needed to get attention somewhere else, or now I could be the big guy in the dressing room, and I could be like a veteran sort of thing, and do things to bully kids. That's actually kind of what you would call it in today's world. And it's like he wasn't a bad kid at all, but he just didn't have the confidence to not be like a dick. So he was like farting around was a better alternative, get some attention, and so. But yeah, your kids do things, and
when I had this one, this was last week. Like there's little kids, they're playing 3-on-3. It's little kids, man. They bump into each other. They turn around too fast and their stick flies. Like these are things that I've seen, we're used to working with. It's not that crazy. And I got parents coming down losing their shit.
Oh yeah,
losing their shit.
Kid
like
hit my kid. Yeah.
So I had like 3-4 different times parents come down and interrupt me while I'm trying to do some kind of teaching thing on the ice. Like pull me aside. I'm in the middle of doing drills. And like that's what you do when there's an emergency. You know what I mean? And so I have to go to the side for them to say some irrelevant thing where I'm just like, they're kids, dude. I'm watching. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and like, so just to take that to a different level, like, so this morning I had a really good player, like very good, and we're doing a drill, and I said, start that over. I said, was that your best effort on the D side? It was a little one-on-one drill into the corners and stuff. He goes, well, there's that. And I said, no. I'm not asking you about, I'm asking what time it is, not how the watch was made. Was that your best effort? And then he finally goes, no. I said, well, that's not good. I said, what? So why wouldn't you give your best effort? Well, I don't know. Like, well, that's like not unacceptable. My point to saying that is that there's so many times where you could talk to a kid and the parents, because the kid is good. So the kid could get back. Like I've had this before where I could say, if you have those habits, if you don't care about the defensive zone, if you fart around in practice, if you don't, A, B, C, D, whatever the thing is, if you don't change that, or if that doesn't become a priority, you can never play at a higher level. Where the parent will spin that to say, you said my kid can't play.
Yeah.
Well, like you're picking on him. I said, no, that's not what I was saying. I was giving him good information. You guys are choosing to take it as very, very negative. So like I always said to you, and for some people that listen, they can say, well, that's not really good parenting. But I'm being very honest about this. I tell this to the kids that I teach. If my son came home from school at any point with a D or an F in a class, would I lose it or not? And they say, oh yeah, for sure. I'm like, not necessarily. I would try to find out what the reason was. Number one, why do you have a D or an F? Are you not an intelligent kid? And maybe it was math, and it would be look it up. Look at it, I'm like, but if it's in math, maybe that's okay. You just don't get this thing and you're just totally out to lunch. So that could be like an actual thing. You don't get it. But that might be one. The teacher could be an idiot. Well, maybe not. An F is an F or a D is a D. So maybe it's not the teacher, but maybe it is. It could be. It could be. But let's get down to it. What is it? Like, how come you got an F? Did you do? I haven't seen you do any homework. I haven't seen you study or try or care. I've seen you do all kinds of other things. I haven't did homework. So that's an issue. But the thing with that issue, it's fixable. It's between him and I, and or mom and I and him to figure out what the problem is and to actually fix it if we care about him succeeding in that area of his life. And if he's not an intelligent person and he just gets a C or a D, but he's putting in some effort and that's what he's got, then that's what he's got. But if it came back that he was a disrespectful kid in class, that he was bullying, like, I don't like using the word bullying, but that's a term people use today. But if you're picking on people, not treating people in your class right, if the teacher was doing something that you were disrespectful in their class, would I lose it? 1,000%. That's where I lose it, because that's a reflection of myself. That's a reflection of my family. That's a reflection of him, and you become an unlikable person. So someone can't. Well, you can, but I don't think you should dislike someone as a teacher because they struggle in a class. But if they're disruptive and they're not nice kids, then that's a reason for me to dislike you. And it's no different than hockey. It's like if you shoot a puck and it's just not a hard puck, or you're trying, your effort's there, and your attitude is decent, and you're willing to come to the rink and maybe even struggle through things, or you're the best player on the ice and you're helping other players get better and stuff, like you got good attitude and good habits, then you can't get upset with that. But it's when you are talking to a group of kids, especially kids that are old enough to know better, and they don't follow the instruction because they just weren't listening, and they blow a drill because they weren't paying attention, or they were disrupting another player on the ice, or just being a jackass. That's where you have every right as a coach and a teacher to snap. And that's where parents, in my opinion, need to accept the fact that their kid wasn't perfect that day.
Yeah. So exactly what you just laid out, that is my frustration. Parents' ability to do that, what you just said. It's like, okay, the kid got an F. Should you snap? The answer is not just yes. The answer is we have to figure it out. What's the reason? Can we root cause this? And my frustration is exactly this, is I'm seeing a lack of ability from parents to do this. And like the people running down to the side of the bench in a 3-on-3 for fun game with 11-year-olds, somebody tripped somebody. And it's like, yeah, maybe the kid's an asshole and he's trying to run around and pitchfork guys. Or maybe he's 11 and he's not that steady on his skates and he's fallen 4 times in the same shift and he's tripped 3 people in the 4 times. I'm watching the same game you are. And it's like, they just can't see that. They just see this kid's running around and he tripped my kid and now my kid's crying or whatever. And that's my frustration. It's like the ability for parents to do the process you just said of figuring out the root cause of why is my kid in situation X, or why is this thing going on, and that critical thinking stuff is, I'm just frustrated by it right now with having these conversations. I don't understand. It's not that I don't understand. It's, you know the parent environment. Like everyone that listens to this right now, it's like, you guys know what I'm talking about when we're talking about hockey parents. These are the videos that get the most likes because people know what we're talking about, you know? And I just don't get, it's not that I don't get, I'm trying to say something useful to make some kind of change about that, because I'm tired, man. Like the last, like the last couple weeks, like having some of these talks, I'm like, oh my God. Like, oh my God, man.
Well, I'm tired too.
Yeah. And I'm trying to be like, I'm trying to be like young and spry about it. And, you know, like I'm hungry to make change, and I got this, you know, fresh perspective on things because I'm breaking into doing this, and it's just sweating the things that don't matter or unable to see your kid for what they are. Just to be clear, I'm not trying to be negative, although it is negative, I guess, but I'm not trying to be, but it's just like, guys, you know what I mean? It's just like, guys, come on,
conversations,
please.
just, again, I'm not trying to be negative either.
Yeah. It's just honest, man.
No,
It's just honest. Like
it's listen, most parents want their kids to do really well. And if you only look at it one way, then you're going to get frustrated. And if you're looking like at everything is the end all be all to your future in hockey, then just relax. But the things with parents is I've had some unbelievable conversations. I've had unbelievable ones, and it's exhausting because it's just so funny, man. Like if I was always, I mean, this is not rocket science, but I don't go to the doctor and tell him what's wrong. I don't do that because he's got 7 years minimum of education that knows what's up, right? So when you talk to someone in hockey that's actually in hockey, so like for myself, when people tell me how hockey works, like in the youth thing of but things have changed or whatever, I just sit there and I go, I'm tired. Like you said, I'm tired, man. I'm tired because very, very often when someone, I told this to a lot, very often when people come in, hey, can I talk to you a little bit? It's typically the same type of stuff, and they ask for advice, and I tell them straight out how maybe to approach it or how to think about it, but what will happen and where it matters. And they go and typically walk out of here and go, okay, that's not the answer I wanted, so I'm going to do what I thought I wanted to do. I just was looking for someone to agree with me. And then I can't tell you how many times, and you've seen it live, people say, I should have just listened to you. It's like, yeah, like when the doctor says stay off your broken foot or your broken leg for 6 weeks, you can't do anything because whatever, I'm no doctor, right? Then if you choose to go and rush that after 2 weeks and you go back and you said, yeah, I should have listened to you. It's like, yes, you should have listened to me.
Yeah, I know. And that's for me. It's like, I'm not trying to sit here and be an asshole and act like I know everything, because I don't. But coming from having been through the higher level hockey loops and being in it now, and then even go outside of hockey, if we're just talking about developing the kids to be better kids, like I'm even thinking of it from that perspective, like having finished my degree and got whatever I could out of hockey and all, like I did that. I've seen it. I know what it's like. I know what it's like going through that. I know how to get there. I know what a good environment looks like. I know what it doesn't look like. I know these things just from experience of going through it and learning about it. And it's like these are the frustrating points. So I guess my take home, I guess for parents, to leave on a positive note, is just try to have some, best you can, just have some self-analysis about like how you're thinking of a certain situation with respect to it being a bigger picture thing, if that's what you care about. Because some people, like, that's just not what they care about, and it is what it is. But if you're someone who you'd like to think you're a reasonable person, just compare where your current thought process is to like a bigger picture here. Like, what's the bigger picture? Because I fully appreciate getting sucked into it, man. I'm telling you, I'm right in the middle of it right now, and I can fully appreciate it. You got the blinders on and you're focused on right here, right now, because today's the most important. I get it. But for the sake of things being easier for your life, just try to make that comparison to the bigger picture thing, because speaking on behalf of you and myself, coming from that higher level perspective, having been through it, a lot of this stuff either resolves itself, the solution will present itself, there are things that don't matter anyways. All these things are usually the case.
What we got to do as we talk about this is, like, I can't wait till my kid's done. No, I can wait. I like it too much. But like when he's done, could talk about what mattered and what didn't. And we should actually reach out to a couple guys and just go through it, because you'll sit there and, well, you'll hear it.
Yeah, you'll hear it.
You'll hear it, and then probably think it's changed or something. But at least you heard it from someone that's relatively fresh out of the game or still in the game, but like what they would change about it. That's something we're going to put on the thing shortly.
Yeah,
let me get someone.
That's for sure. It's important, man. It is. Yeah. And I would have Charlie on here today, but I don't want him to get chirped too bad, right, Charlie? So, anyways.
Yeah, no, I think it's good because, like, I think that'll be good to get some one or two guys
from actual guys. Yeah.
Well, because it's like you're going to hear it. You're going to hear the same stuff I said. Like we'll go back to, we were just talking to someone. I was talking to someone the other day, and they just said, Andy, it was all the stuff you said. all this stuff. I got hung up on spring hockey, thinking that he was going to go here. It's like now I sit there and I go, what was the point of that? I got all these lessons that I did. I watch, there's people that do lessons around here, and I watch and I go, that basically everything you're doing right now will not help your kid be a hockey player. You're getting more ice. That's about what it is. But it's the volume of it. And they got to keep coming out. And like, I'll never say don't get your kid up to go at 6 a.m. to do a skate once in a while or once a week, like to instill some discipline. But they hang on. Like, this is how I'm going to get somewhere. I'm going to get ahead of this guy and stuff. And it's like, it's not gonna make a difference.
Yeah, I know.
I know people disagree, but whatever.
Yeah, it is what it is. But
I'll bring my friends on one day.
Yeah, we can only fight the good fight over here. So, hopefully there's something useful there. So I'm good. You good? I'm good. Okay, see you guys.